Okay, I'm just gonna say this from the beginning. Kim Kardashian, please come and have a seat and let a real society girl show you how it's done. Zsa Zsa Gabor knew how to make men not only date her and give her all of their money, but also marry her and give her all of their money. One of her husbands bought her the Waldorf Astoria simply because she asked. This is Ashley with Ashley Says So, and I am back with another old Hollywood scandal video. And before we begin, I need to make an announcement. One of you guys bought me a beautiful gift off of Amazon, and Amazon did not send the paper information with your name on it so I can know who you are, so I can give you a shout out. So if you have bought me an Amazon gift in the last 3 months and you have not gotten a shout out, please email me at ashleysaysso20@gmail.com, or please respond to the pinned comment at the bottom of this video. And now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, get your pen and paper ready and let Zsa Zsa Gabor give you instructions on how to live a very, very soft life after this disclaimer. Everything in this video is alleged. It's all just rumor, gossip, and scandal that I get from online blogs, books, television. Please do your own research as well. Now let's get to the video. Chileee Gabor, aka Zsa Zsa Gabor, was born on February the 6th, 1917 in Budapest, Hungary. Her mother's name was Chileee Gabor and her father's name was Vilmos Gabor, and on top of Zsa Zsa, the Gabors had 2 more daughters, Zsa Zsa's elder sister Magda and her younger sister Eva. And I won't go into super deep detail about Zsa Zsa's childhood because we have so much more to discuss, but I will say that her life back then was already filled with wealth and luxury. Even as a young girl, Zsa Zsa had servants at her beck and call. Money was unlimited to the family, so Zsa Zsa could pretty much do whatever the heck she wanted. And by the time she was a teenager, what she really wanted was to catch even more attention because of her good looks. And so at the age of 15, Zsa Zsa's mother entered her into the Miss Hungary pageant. And Zsa Zsa ended up placing second, but this did not faze her in any way because Zsa Zsa's mother made sure to tell Zsa Zsa that the real winning prize in life was to snag a wealthy husband. Chileee believed in this way of life so much that she actually sent all 3 of her daughters to a special school that taught classes on how to be an upscale socialite wife. And Zsa Zsa must have excelled at this learning because only about 3 years later, at the age of 18, she ended up marrying a 35-year-old Turkish ambassador by the name of Burhan Belge. And I don't know if the marriage itself, like the dynamic between the couple, was happy or sad, but I do know that it is alleged that Zsa Zsa and her new husband didn't have much intercourse at all. And most people say it was because Burhan was suffering with ED and he really had no business marrying a girl as young as 18. And maybe for Zsa Zsa it wasn't a huge deal because they were living in Hungary, but when they ended up moving to the United States in 1941 and Zsa Zsa got around a more social lifestyle, partying with all of these young, good-looking American men, baby, all that no sex stuff became a huge struggle. And so per the story, her husband started to notice that she was getting kind of antsy in the pants, so he ended up doing the mature thing and he acknowledged that his wife was just a little bit too young to be stuck with him and his limp ways. And he allowed Zsa Zsa to divorce him in 1951, which Zsa Zsa did with the quickness. And although I'm making it seem like Zsa Zsa was ready to leave because it was all about sex, don't get me wrong, that was a huge part of it. But another part of it is that, you know, she was new on the scene, she was young, and also she had become fascinated by show business. So Zsa Zsa also wanted to explore her talents just as much as she wanted to be on the scene. By the year 1942, Zsa Zsa's sisters have also come over to America. And so the Gabor girls, honey, are making a scene. I mean, Zsa Zsa and her sisters are walking into high society parties left and right, looking drop dead flawless. And everybody wants to know, who are these three girls that just dropped into high society over in America, seemingly from heaven? And there were lots of pretty women around the upscale scene, so these girls weren't the only ones, but there was something different about the Gabor sisters. All of the women on the scene obviously wanted to marry for money, but those other girls looked like they wanted to marry for money. You just saw it on them. You smelled it on them. The Gabor girls seemed more sure of themselves. Like, sir, you should know better than to approach me with no money. And so those wealthy men who allegedly don't want to be used for their money were drawn to them like flies, especially Zsa Zsa. Plenty of rich men came up to her wanting to marry her, and most certainly they wanted to bed her, and allegedly Zsa Zsa entertained a few of them. But she always felt like that the men who were approaching her, yes, they had money, yes, they were rich, but they were not the big fish. She was holding out for the big fish, and baby, she found him. His name was Conrad Hilton, and he was a 5-star hotel mogul. And although I'm pumping him up, one would really wonder why Zsa Zsa thought it would be a good idea to get with a man even older than her last husband. But I suppose when money like that comes knocking at your door, baby, you don't turn that away. Especially when Conrad approached Zsa Zsa so very, very generously. Oh, did she want him to purchase a new Rolls Royce so she could be driven around in? You got it. Oh, do you want to go to a trip anywhere in the world? You got it. Shopping trips to buy the actual store? Honey, Conrad courted Zsa Zsa with everything he had. So when he told Zsa Zsa that he wanted to marry her, but she had to pass a test first, Zsa Zsa was ready. And when Conrad walked up to her holding 2 boxes, one holding a small ring and one holding a big, huge ring, and Zsa Zsa was smart enough to choose the small ring, this proved that she wanted to marry Conrad Hilton for love and not money. And Conrad was pleased with this. And so he and Zsa Zsa married in the year 1942. And very soon into their union, Zsa Zsa knew that she had married into some bullshit. Turns out all of that romantic love bombing and generous spending was for the courting stage only. The folks say that not even a year after they were married, Conrad Hilton became cold and distant. Matter of fact, he moved Zsa Zsa out of the marital bed and had her sleeping in a spare room unless he wanted some freaky deaky. He also didn't really have 2 words to say to Zsa Zsa unless it was something he wanted to talk about. Gossip claims that Zsa Zsa was not happy with this treatment, but she was like, hey, at least the money is around. But then she started noticing that there was even a catch-22 with that. You see, Conrad Hilton was the one who bought Zsa Zsa the Waldorf Astoria. But Zsa Zsa started to notice that he didn't buy it solely at her request. He also bought it because he could turn a profit on it. In fact, Conrad made sure that anything he bought for Zsa Zsa would turn a profit because he didn't give her any money to buy anything for herself. Child, the folks say Conrad gave her a budget. He tracked her spending and the allowance he was giving her to have money for her own purchases. Baby, she could have got that same allowance married to a regular old Joe. And then on top of these insults, he straight up changed her name. While they were dating, he said Zsa Zsa just fine. But when they got married, he told her her new name was Georgia because he couldn't say Zsa Zsa right. And this right here sure enough burned Zsa Zsa up because look at her face. Did she look like a Georgia to you? And so after a couple of years of this treatment, Zsa Zsa Gabor got fed up fast. She decided she was sick of her husband being a cheapskate and a jerk, and so she decided to get him back. Besides, since one of the things he liked to do was hold out on the D until he was ready, it was past time for Zsa Zsa to find romance elsewhere with a nice young man who could really stretch her back out. And Zsa Zsa knew just where to find this nice young man. right downstairs in their home because the young man was Conrad's oldest son, Conrad Jr. Baby, the folks say that Zsa Zsa Gabor was downstairs tearing that little 20-year-old up. But while she was enjoying this little payback ride, some people speculate that Conrad Sr. actually found out about his wife playing peekabooty with his son. And they also speculate that this is the real reason that Conrad Sr. did what he did next. And what he did next was allegedly barge into Zsa Zsa's room one night and demand that she make him feel good the way that she had been doing to others. And when Zsa Zsa said no, Conrad Sr. flew into a frenzy and made himself feel good anyway. And this alleged assault resulted in Zsa Zsa becoming pregnant with her daughter, Francesca Hilton. But Conrad had no idea he had gotten Zsa Zsa pregnant because right after this alleged assault, he filed divorce papers. And he was so upset with Zsa Zsa, possibly because he knew about her sleeping with his son, that he ended up fighting in court to not pay her a dime. And this is probably the first and only time that Zsa Zsa allegedly walked away from her marriage with nothing. But it was because she had no time to worry about what was going on with Conrad. She had to focus on her new pregnancy. And thank goodness the pregnancy ended up going well, with Francesca being born in the year 1947. But before Zsa Zsa could even relax into motherhood, danger came barging into her front door. The story says that only 3 days earlier, Zsa Zsa had just been released from the hospital with her newborn baby girl when she, baby girl Francesca, and the nanny were turning down for the night and getting ready for bed. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a masked intruder comes barging into her apartment with a gun held at baby Francesca, threatening to blow her away from here, unless Zsa Zsa told him exactly where all of her jewelry was. Zsa Zsa pointed to the other room with no hesitation, and the robber took the jewelry and he left. Zsa Zsa was happy to have made it through this experience in one piece, but it left her very shaken. And it also left her feeling like she should hurry up and get back on the search of finding another husband so she could have a man in the house with her. And when she attended a party a few months later, she found the man that she wanted. The man's name was George Sanders, and he was an actor. And Zsa Zsa walked right up to him and she said, "Oh, darling, come close to me. I just have to let you know that I've spotted you from across the room, and now I am madly in love with you." And George Sanders, being the witty man that he was, responded, "Well, look at me. I totally understand why, dear." And this makes Zsa Zsa Gabor laugh. And so he and Zsa Zsa laugh and flirt all night long. But there was one problem with all of this keying. George Sanders belonged to somebody else. He'd been married to his wife, Susan Larson, for close to 10 years. But sadly, George Sanders wasn't the man that let his wife stop him from finding true love. And so he ended up pulling a Harlem Nights. "Look here, Susan, I'm never coming home again." And he served her with divorce papers that were finalized in the year 1949. And that is the same year that he married his new love, Zsa Zsa Gabor. But Zsa Zsa really shouldn't have married George Sanders, and she especially shouldn't have ripped him away from his wife, because once she got him, she found out that she really wasn't all that interested in being what he wanted her to be. And she definitely wasn't really interested in George the way she was interested in her newfound career. Because by the early 1950s, Zsa Zsa was finally becoming a star. Now, she wasn't like this A-list movie actress or anything like that. As a matter of fact, most of her fame came from TV. But she certainly was a well-known celebrity who could still hang with the best of them. And while Zsa Zsa is getting more and more attention and becoming bigger and bigger, her big-time Oscar-winning husband is becoming smaller and smaller. You know, his career is dying out. And so George Sanders starts to turn into a man who is jealous of his wife. And so their marriage turns into a series of arguments where George feels like Zsa Zsa should pay less attention to her career and more attention to him. And when Zsa Zsa Gabor finds love difficult with one man, she finds love easy with another man. And by 1953, she was having an affair with one of the easiest lovers around, diplomat, polo player, race car driver, Porfirio Rubirosa. And Porfirio was married at this time to Barbara Hutton, but we already know what that marriage was like because we discussed it in the Barbara Hutton video. And so it wasn't nothing for Porfirio to be turned on by his newest love interest, Zsa Zsa. And Zsa Zsa was having the absolute best time of her life because Porfirio Rubirosa was said to be the best lover that Hollywood has ever seen. The man just had it like that, if you catch my drift. And so Zsa Zsa went crazy over that thing, child. The folks say she started staying away from home. Then she started being very nonchalant with George Sanders. You know, like, boy, whatever, I don't care what you say. You know how some women behave when they found a new lover. You know what I'm saying? They start treating their main dude or their husbands like, whatever, I don't care no more. And so because Zsa Zsa was acting this way, her husband George Sanders became furious. And so he ended up hiring a private detective to follow Zsa Zsa around. And on Christmas Eve of 1953, Zsa Zsa made up some excuse on why she had to leave the house for the night. She got in her car and she started driving, but little did she know a PI was following her. Per the PI, Zsa Zsa stopped by a store to make a purchase, and then she ended up picking up Porfirio Rubirosa. She and Porfirio went to an apartment that Zsa Zsa had rented, and they went upstairs. And when the PI saw that the apartment was upstairs, he ended up leaving and going to a payphone and calling George Sanders to tell him, yes, you know, she has picked up this man, but now they are in an apartment that's located upstairs, so I cannot see in the window exactly what they are doing. Baby said, George said, you might can't see what they doing, but I bet I can. After that, George Sanders pulled up to the apartment complex in a truck with a ladder in the back. He put the ladder up against the wall and he started climbing, and he made it to where the window was, but the ladder got shaky. Next thing you know, George Sanders was in the bed with Zsa Zsa Gabor and Porfirio Rubirosa. He had fallen and crashed through the window. And the folks say that the situation had happened so fast that at first all three of them froze. But soon George Sanders came to his senses. Baby said he jumped up and was like, see what you made me do? A man ain't supposed to be falling off no ladder into the bed with his wife and her lover. You ain't nothing but a whore. Well, as soon as George had started fussing, Porfirio ran off from the bed naked down the hallway somewhere. And Zsa Zsa was still so much in shock that she didn't run anywhere. She just, snatched up the covers over her and was just kind of sitting there looking at her husband fuss. And so George Sanders is still going on and on about how he married a hooker, and soon he ends up tiring himself out, and he slowly starts to sit on the foot of the bed, with his head in his hand. And Zsa Zsa, still kind of scared, doesn't really know what to do, and so she just says, honey, would you like something to drink? And surprisingly, George Sanders says yes, he would. And they end up spending the rest of that night together, but they just couldn't work the marriage out after the affair. And so they ended up divorcing very shortly after that. And George Sanders must have really, really loved Zsa Zsa Gabor and really didn't want to let her go in his heart or something, because about 10 years, well, maybe about 14 years after that, he ended up marrying Zsa Zsa's older sister, Magda Gabor. But to continue talking about Zsa Zsa, after her marriage dissolved with George Sanders, she was alone for a pretty good while. I mean, she messed around, and dated and slept around and stuff like that. But she didn't get remarried until the year 1962, which is when she married a banker by the name of Herbert Huttner. And Herbert, from everything I saw and read, should have been the perfect husband for Zsa Zsa. All he wanted to do was to wait on her hands and feet, wanted to shower her with gifts and affection. Whatever she wanted him to do is what he wanted to do, while giving her an unlimited supply of money. Per the stories, he really wanted life to be a paradise for Zsa Zsa. And unfortunately for Herbert, Zsa Zsa hated every second of it. As a matter of fact, Zsa Zsa felt like all of this came too easy to her. She said that this man loved her so correctly and gave her so much money and everything else she needed that he almost took away the drive that she had, her will to work. He was just too agreeable for her, and she felt like life should be filled with excitement. And so she found another man who could give her the excitement she was craving. His name was Joshua S. Cosden Jr., and she divorced her loving husband, Herbert Hutner, in 1966, and about 5 days later, she married Mr. Excitement. But I guess the excitement that Josh Cosden Jr. had in mind was not the type of excitement that Zsa Zsa liked, because that marriage only lasted a year. And after their 1967 divorce, Zsa Zsa stayed single for around 7 years. And then she heard about this man named Jack Ryan, who had actually created a doll in his first wife's image. And this doll was the Barbie doll. And so Zsa Zsa is like, I'm beautiful. I should have a doll created after me. Is he single? And amazingly, Jack Ryan was single. And so he and Zsa Zsa got married in 1975. But I think along with Jack Ryan's doll creating ways, he also had some very strange, weird behavior about himself. Allegedly, he used to throw these very strange and weird parties where people danced on the tables, but they wouldn't be dancing to the music of the day. They would be dancing to medieval music. And he allegedly would like for his party guests to do strange things, and sometimes he would be very distant and cold to his family as well as Zsa Zsa, allegedly. And so that marriage also lasted 1 year, and Jack Ryan and Zsa Zsa ended up divorcing in 1976. While divorcing Jack Ryan, Zsa Zsa fell in love with her divorce lawyer, a man by the name of Michael O'Hara. And I suppose this marriage was happy. There wasn't much information about this marriage in the tabloids or in the news articles, because Zsa Zsa by this time was not the star that she used to be. You know what I'm saying? She was getting older. Her business was becoming more of her own. Paparazzi wasn't everywhere. So I don't really know much about this marriage, but whatever happiness there might have been, it was over in 1982 when they divorced. In 1983, Zsa Zsa met and married Felipe D'Alba. But when they went to file the legal papers for the marriage, the courts told her that she was still actually married to Michael O'Hara. But they told her if she could give them a day, that divorce would be done and everything could proceed with this new marriage. Well, by that next day, Zsa Zsa had decided that she was no longer in love with her new husband, Felipe D'Alba. And so instead of filing the papers to confirm the marriage legally, they actually filed annulment papers. And after the end of this one-day marriage, it really seems like Zsa Zsa just started to contemplate and think about her love life and her past marriages. And during all of this thinking, she, for some reason, zeroed in on the fact that she had not married a prince yet. She had not been made a princess. Rita Hayworth had become a princess. Grace Kelly had become a princess. Where's my prince? I've been married 8 times, and not one of them have been a prince. And amazingly, by the year 1986, her prince had come along. His name was Frederick Prince von Anhalt, and he wasn't a prince by blood, but he'd been adopted by Princess Marie Augusta of Anhalt. And I guess this was good enough for Zsa Zsa, because even though this man was 26 years younger than her, she married him in 1986. And per her daughter, Francesca, it was the worst mistake that Zsa Zsa had ever made. Francesca said that her mother Zsa Zsa had been looking for a prince so she could become a princess, but instead she had married an evil queen, honey. Yes, honey, Francesca was insinuating that her new step-papa was gay and that he had no romantic interest in Zsa Zsa. He was only interested in her fame and her money. And maybe Francesca was right, because allegedly, as soon as Frederick married Zsa Zsa, he ended up cutting her off from her family members, daughter Francesca included. He also allegedly tried to demand that Zsa Zsa cut her children out of her will. At one point, he tried to get Zsa Zsa to sue her daughter Francesca, saying that Francesca was putting a stain on his reputation as well as Zsa Zsa's. But as much as he tried to convince Zsa Zsa to sue her own daughter, Zsa Zsa would not do it. And then also, for some reason, when Zsa Zsa got with Frederick, she started kind of to behave badly. In the year 1989, she was pulled over for drinking and driving without a license. And when the police told her to step outside of the car, Zsa Zsa did, but she reached over and slapped the policeman 3 times and jumped back in her car and floored it. Zsa Zsa Crazy Tail was eventually caught and thrown in jail at the age of 72. And then also in 1989, she was escorted off of a plane because she refused to keep her dogs in the dog kennel. And then at one of her shows, she ended up being nasty to a few wheelchair-bound people who were sitting on the front row by telling security to go down and move them to the back because she didn't want, I guess, those type of people to be seen at the front of the show. But then was looking crazy when those handicapped folks started calling her a puffy-faced buzzard and started complaining to the news outlets. Then she tried to blame it all on security and the show's producers, saying that, she had nothing to do with that. That was all of their idea. And then in the year 2002, at the age of 85, she ended up being involved in a car crash, which left her partially paralyzed and partially wheelchair bound herself. And then around the year 2010, Zsa Zsa suffered several heart attacks and she recovered from those, but in 2011 her right leg had to be amputated because it had become infected. And then for some reason at the age of 94 she started to become really wily. She started even telling people that she wanted to have a baby. Said her and her husband Frederick was working on it. And honey, I don't know if they were working on it or not, but I do know that allegedly Zsa Zsa's family were kind of embarrassed and they felt like Frederick was just kind of, I don't know if he was letting her act out or kind of pushing her. He wasn't trying to stop it. You know what I'm saying? He didn't mind Zsa Zsa doing this because allegedly he liked the fame and attention that came with it. And then in the year 2015, even more people had become upset with Frederick because Zsa Zsa's daughter, Francesca, had passed away. But Frederick had allegedly driven such a deep wedge between mother and daughter. Zsa Zsa had no idea that her daughter had even passed away. And when people started to demand that Frederick tell his wife that her daughter has passed, he refused to do so, saying that he did not want to upset his wife in her elderly age. But although he didn't want to upset Zsa Zsa by telling her about the death of her daughter, he was willing to uproot Zsa Zsa and move her from the United States to Hungary. But he claimed it was all Zsa Zsa's idea, saying that she just wanted to be closer to her place of birth. But a lot of people were side-eyeing that because all of Zsa Zsa's family now was here in the U.S. And they also were side-eyeing it because by this time, Zsa Zsa was 99 years old and everybody was hoping and praying that she would make it to 100 years old. And they felt like, the move would just put a lot of pressure on her and it might take that away. But unfortunately, Zsa Zsa neither moved to Hungary or saw the age of 100 anyway. Because on December the 18th, 2016, Zsa Zsa Gabor died of cardiac arrest. And so this is the end of the old Hollywood scandalous tale of Miss Zsa Zsa Gabor. If you guys liked the video, please like the video. If you guys are new here, please subscribe. If you've been sitting on the fence, please subscribe. I am on the road to 300K. We got to get there, so hit the subscribe. Doggone it. Anyway, y'all, I love y'all. I'll be back with another video soon.